Ladies and gentlemen, good day and welcome to the Home First Finance Q1 FY22 earnings conference call. As a reminder, all participant lines will be in the listen-only mode, and there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions after the presentation concludes. Should you need assistance during the conference call, please signal an operator by pressing star then 0 on your touchtone phone. Please note that this conference is being recorded. I now hand the conference over to Mr. Manoj Viswanathan, Managing Director and CEO of Home First Finance. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our financial result discussion call for Q1 FY22. On behalf of the company, I extend a warm welcome to all of you. I hope that all of you and your families are safe and healthy. Today on the call, I'm joined by Ms. Nutan Gaba Patwari, our CFO, Mr. Manish Kayal, and Ms. Vidula Varlikar from our Investor Relations team. I hope everybody had an opportunity to go through our investor deck and press release. We have also uploaded the Excel version of our fact sheet on our website. I request you to have a look. We will quickly summarize our Q1 results. The first topic is COVID Wave 2. Q1 saw the entry of Wave 2 in our vocabulary. From the middle of April till mid-June, the entire country was reeling under the onslaught of the virus. It started in north and west and then spread to the southern part of the country. However, it was different this time. Health was impacted, but livelihoods and income were protected. The economy did relatively well, and exports reached an historical high. At Home First, we witnessed the following. Vaccination has become a critical element of doing business, and we have got 97.3% of our employees vaccinated with their first dose. In fact, Wave 2 started in mid-April, and collection efficiency was lower in April and May, at 95% and 94% respectively. In June, most parts of the country started returning to normal. Bounce rate that had gone up in May came down, and collection efficiency went up to 97.6%. Business impact was highest in May, with a lesser impact in April and June. Overall, disbursements ended at 67% of Q4 FY21 levels, that is to 305 crores compared to 452 crores. Both business and collections have shown a sharp rebound in July. Bounce rate reduced to 16.1%, which has been the lowest since the start of the pandemic in April last year. Collection efficiency run rates have reached Q4 levels. Originations and disbursements have also reached Q4 levels on the back of strong demand from all our markets. Coming to the Q1 FY22 results, the profit after tax is at 35 crores, a sequential growth of 12.2% on a quarter-on-quarter basis, despite the challenges faced on account of COVID Wave 2. Our AUM stands at 4,294 crores, up by 18.5% year-on-year. Cost to income came down to 32% in Q1 FY22, compared to Q4 level of 38%. Our gross stage 3 is at 1.9% and net stage 3 is at 1.4%, with a 0.6% restructuring. We have provided a moratorium to 208 borrowers for their overdue payments and extended their tenure to accommodate the moratorium. We have selected customers on the basis of their ability to be cured. 30 DPD has gone up to 5.8%, which has increased from 4.1% in the previous quarter, and 1 DPD has increased to 8.9% in Q1 from 6.2% in the previous quarter. Coming to distribution, we operate with 72 physical branches. We have commenced business in 33 potential branch locations. These have started contributing 14% of the incremental business. In addition, we have established digital presence in 32 locations that are currently contributing 6% of the incremental business. Totally, these 65 new distribution points are contributing 20% of the new business. The total touch points where we are present currently stand at 137. Coming to digital initiatives continue to see further progress. We have now launched electronic stamp paper, electronic signatures, and e-NACH across all our branches. Our customer app continues to enjoy high usage, with more than 67% of our customers registered on the app, compared to 48% a year ago. Payments and service requests made via the app in Q1 FY22 have gone up by 135% and 148% respectively compared to Q1 FY21. Loan approval turnaround time has improved further, with 91% of loans approved in 48 hours compared to 88% in the previous quarter. Digital and strategic channels have contributed 4% to new originations in Q1 compared to 3% in FY21. With this, I would now like to hand over the call to Nutan to take you through the financials. Nutan, over to you.
Good evening all. I will take you through our performance in Q1 FY22. Starting with the financial performance, we stayed focused on NIM, OpEx, PPOP and credit cost. Our NIM expanded from 4.7% to 4.9% in Q1 due to the expansion of spread from 5.4% to 5.5%. Net interest income had gone by 16.9% on year-on-year basis and 11.8% on the quarter-on-quarter basis. Operating expense has seen a downward trend due to improving operating efficiency and judicious spending. OpEx to AUM stands at 2.5% for the quarter, lower by 40 basis points on QOQ basis. PPOP now has crossed 60 crores, a Q1Q growth of 19%, coming from an expanding NIM base, as well as continued focus on OpEx as mentioned earlier. Credit cost of 1.1% is due to additional provisioning as well as write-off of the one-off sticky portion of the asset base. Out of the 13 crores in credit cost, the impact of write-off is 3 crores. 2 crores is on account of increase in book and 8 crores is on account of higher stage 2 and stage 3 balances. With the onset of second wave of COVID, recovery from this one-off sticky base looked weak, and as a result, our board and auditors felt it was prudent to write it off. The total write-off amount was 12 crores. Our ECL provision continues to be 1.4% of the total principal outstanding. We have continued to be prudent with the provision, and we have provided for the restructured loans on the highest stage 2 ECL basis. Our PAT at 35 crores continued to expand on a quarter-on-quarter basis and reported a growth of 12.2%. On a PAT excluding DA income basis, we have grown by 5% on a year-on-year basis. Moving to liquidity and borrowing, we are rated A+ with stable outlook for long-term credit from CARE and ICRA, and A1+ for short-term credit from ICRA and India Ratings. The company has access to diversified and cost-effective long-term financing with 19 marquee lenders. We expanded our banking relationship in the quarter with a foreign bank by adding HSBC. Our total borrowings, including debt securities, are at 3083 crores as of June 21 from 305 crores as of March 21. The mix of borrowing is 45% from banks, public sector 24%, and private sector 21%. 26% from NHB refinance and 22% from direct assignment. We continue to have zero borrowing through commercial paper. Our cost of borrowing has been trending downward. Our Q1 FY22 cost of borrowing stood at 7.2%, further reduced from 7.4% in Q4 FY21. Our marginal cost of borrowing for Q1 FY22 was 7.6%. Moving to capital, our CRAR is 56.4% and Tier 1 is at 52.2%. Our June net worth stands at 1417 crores vis-a-vis 1381 crores as of March. Our quarter ROA stood at 3.1%, higher from 2.9% witnessed in Q4 FY21. Our annualized ROE stands at 10% on the Q1 numbers. Our book value per share is 162 as of June, and diluted EPS for the quarter was 3.9 versus 3.6 in Q4. To summarize, as a company, we continue to invest in our strong digital operating model to deliver superior service to customers with industry-leading turnaround time. With a strong balance sheet, we have the opportunity to increase our market share as well as scale up our presence in existing and newer geographies. The company has comfortable liquidity of 1480 crores to facilitate the planned growth. With our lean organization and cost architecture, we continue to work on reducing costs and improving profitability. We have taken prudent measures on provisioning and early risk recognition. Our high ECL provision of 1.4% reflects our stand. With this, I open the floor for discussion.
Thank you very much. We will now begin the question and answer section. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and one on the touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and two. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. The first question is from the line of Karthik Chillappa from Buena Vista Fund Management. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Thank you very much, team. Am I audible?
Yes, Karthik, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Congrats on the quarter. So I have 3 questions. The first one is, if we were to look at our gross NPA of about 1.9%, at what stage do you think it peaks, and at what point of time should we start to see some moderation in that ratio?
I think 1.9%, we were at 1.8% last quarter, and this quarter there has been a 10 basis points slippage. It's come to 1.9. As you know, we have restructured about 200 accounts, so that's about 60 basis points. Most of the restructured accounts are regular, so we are basically dealing with a 1.9% NPA. There will obviously be some flow from the earlier buckets into NPA in the coming months. So overall, if you look at it, we are targeting in the next 2 to 3 quarters, we are targeting to get back to a pre-COVID level. So which means 1.9%, say going down to a 1%. So we are looking at winding this down by about 10 basis points every month. That's really our target.
Okay, excellent. Manoj, the second question is, if I were to look at most of the internal metrics, whether it is your check bounce rate or whether it is your 1 DPD or 30 DPD, relative to the fourth quarter, which was actually a recovering quarter, the pace of deterioration hasn't been that high, at least compared to the other peers who have reported so far. In your view, what would explain this relative resilience?
See, we have always been, maintaining this stand that we are, present in the larger market. We are, if you look at our portfolio, it is largely skewed towards only housing loans. 90% plus is housing loans. Third factor is 75% of our customers are salaried. So these are all contributing factors. So which is why you can see our bounce rate is coming down. So our bounce rate in July was frankly the best that we have seen after the pandemic started last April. So these are all the contributing factors to why the portfolio is more resilient.
Okay, great. Excellent. My last question is on your effective tax rate. Now, almost all housing finance companies are required to appropriate 20% of their profits under a special reserve under the NHB Act, and the same is allowed as a deduction under the IT Act. So effectively, they end up paying 25% tax on 80% of the profit, which gets to a 20% effective tax rate. One of your closest peers also reports that kind of an effective tax rate. Why is Home First still having a 25-26% kind of effective tax rate and unable to take advantage of this benefit?
So Karthik, we have continued to create a deferred tax liability on the special limit reserve, and that essentially creates the difference. We have started to work on this, and we should be able to come back to you in a quarter's time.
Yeah, can we say that over a period of time, our effective tax rate should go towards the normalized 20-21% rate, which should be the case in principle? Can we guide that comfortably, or do you need another quarter or two to confidently say?
So we have to work with the auditors, and as you are aware, our auditors are changing. So what we will be able to give you a definite answer.
Okay, no problem. Thank you very much for this color, Manoj and Nutan. Wish you and the team all the very best. I'll come back in the queue for more questions if any. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. We would like to remind participants that you may press star one to ask a question. The next question is from the line of Apurva Trivedi from Moon Capital. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Manoj and Nutan. Thanks for the opportunity. A couple of questions. One on operating expenses. You mentioned, fairly significant reduction in OpEx to AUM quarter-on-quarter. Just wanted to understand how much of that was driven by lower disbursements versus, kind of a more sustainable reduction in OpEx.
So Apurva, there will be a secular reduction in OpEx, continuously as we keep scaling up and keep optimizing our processes. Particularly for this quarter, there was obviously some impact of the, we can say, lower level of activity. So some limited amount of travel, etc. Because of the second wave of COVID. So that has contributed to the sharp decline. But otherwise, over the next course of few quarters, there should be a gradual decline in operating.
Okay, but would you be able to break that, reduction that you saw this quarter into, because I'm assuming some portion of that is due to lower volumes, right?
Right. So Apurva, the way to look at it is essentially in two buckets. The amount contributed by the lower disbursement and the amount contributed by, let's say, lower spending on the discretionary side. So probably a 60-40 kind of a ratio is what I think we can attribute right now.
Understand. And in terms of originations, I mentioned that July numbers are already in line with fourth quarter levels. Just wanted to get a sense, from here on, do you see those originations accelerating, again, barring a sort of third wave and all those kind of factors? Or do you think in the next few months it will be stable and, you would like to watch the market before it kind of picks up?
So origination started coming back sharply in June itself, and July has been even better. So we are seeing a sustained improvement in origination and disbursement going forward. It's across all markets. We are seeing this recovery, and it's fairly sustained. It was not just a spurt immediately after the wave receded. I mean, we are continuously seeing week-on-week improvement in demand and demand origination and disbursement. So we feel confident that this is a sustained recovery which will last the entire year.
Okay. And maybe I'll just sneak in one more question. In terms of provisions, I think you gave some color in terms of the number of accounts restructured and reduction in NP, etc. Maybe just help us understand a little bit how you're thinking about the adequacy of provisions you have and kind of the trajectory for that over the next couple of quarters.
So Apurva, if you see our total book of around 3,400 crores of principal outstanding, our provision cover on an overall basis is 1.4%, which has been consistent over the last few quarters. Now, given the kind of recovery we are already seeing with the leading indicators, let's say the bounce rate, also the collections to date, we are very positive, and like Manoj mentioned about a 10 basis points reduction on the overall GNPA, we are feeling very confident. So from that perspective, provisions look reasonable. Coming to the specific point on stage 3, where you see the ECL provision coming off from 36% to 26%, that's because of one of the key assets that I mentioned, and that was the impact on the weighted average contributing to that number. Now that we have taken off and there was a provision already against it, the total number dropped. But because the current book of stage 3 is fully distributed, we don't see any need to take higher provisions than this. So that's how we are looking at it very soon.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Susmit Patodia from Motilal Oswal. Please go ahead.
Good evening. Great set of numbers. Thank you, team. I have a few questions. First is on the spread at 5.5%, near all-time highs. How do you think about this? You want to claw it back, and if doing so, will it boost growth?
So see, historically we have been, competing in the larger markets where there is a challenge on rate, or there is a battle on rate, with the larger lenders. Gradually, we are also expanding our network into smaller towns. So we are feeling confident that, the yields that we are currently clocking can be sustained. But at the same time, we are at a, kind of, let's say, a low point in the interest rate cycle, and the cost of borrowing has been continuously declining, which is why you're seeing kind of all-time high spreads. I would say confidently that, we can maintain spreads of around 4.75 to 5%. Whether it will stay at 5.5% depends on a lot of other factors.
So just on the competition part, whenever we talk to any DSA or any channel partner, everybody's saying that the only thing that the banks are comfortable doing is housing loan right now. So are you seeing any competition pressure, any BT that is happening on your books?
There is heightened activity on home loans, and large lenders are also quite active on home loans. But if you see the overall home loan market, including the prime segment, mid segment, there is a recovery across all segments. So the rate war is largely in the prime and mid prime segments in housing loans. When it comes to affordable housing, most of the players in this space, operate in a certain range. And in that sense, there is no, you can say, direct battle or direct war on the pricing in the market. So which is why we are able to maintain those kind of yields. So the larger lenders kind of restrict themselves to the premium segment, and affordable housing players, have operated in a certain price range. So that's really how the market is split.
Okay. So you are not having pressure of customers coming back and telling you to reprice. I saw the ad at 0.66%, etc., etc. Those kind of pressures.
We do have anecdotal incidents like that. But it's not like a surge of customers coming to us.
Okay. And the third question, if I may ask, is you had given us this framework of 10 to 1, right? Which is 10 bounce rate to 30 and 1 as NPA.
That's right.
This quarter is quite amazing. It's 18.62. So how did you manage this? Is there any special collection machinery you put in? So in a way, following up from what Karthik asked in the beginning, how did you manage this?
No, I see our branch architecture has been from the beginning, the entire team handling being responsible for collections. So in every branch, the 5 to 10 member team is responsible for collections. So in some sense that has helped us, because we don't have to then add an additional team for collections or a specialized team for collections. We are able to do the load balancing very nicely. So if, let us say, there is a spike in, delinquency in one branch, we are able to deploy people from another branch and manage that situation. So as far as last quarter was concerned, nothing special. I think there was only a temporary spike because of the sudden surge in COVID. So in April and May, some customers who are generally used to making their payments. So if you see our 1+ in March, it was 6.2%. And in June now it has gone up to 8.9. So there is a 2.7% of our customers who have obviously missed some payment in April, May or June. So that's the reason. It's a temporary reason. Large number of these customers are going to be, you can say they are going to pay off their missed payments and come back to normalcy. We help them out by doing partial collections so that they can catch up on their payments in 2-3 months. So they make one installment payment, and for the missed payment they will make a partial payment and they catch up in 2-3 months. So that's what we will do, and make them help them to get back to normal to a normal payment situation. So that's it's just the collection architecture. I mean the branch architecture, the way we have created it, where everybody is responsible for collections, and that helps us to manage these numbers.
Okay. And just if I may, one last question is on your digital dashboard slide. So you have about 50,000 customers, and you've mentioned that 4,000 are now paying via the app.
That's true.
Correct? Yeah. No, when you say paying via the app, if you could just explain to us what that would mean.
Yeah. So let me explain. So you must be wondering because, obviously all the customers should be on NACH and they should be on electronic debit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is true. 100% of our customers are on electronic debit. But at the same time, it is in our interest as an organization to keep people hooked onto the app because that will also enable us to retain customers. So we have provided a very smooth payment experience on the app, and some customers, in fact, prefer to use that, rather than doing an NACH, getting debited through the NACH method. That is one reason. Another big reason is that we allow customers to make very small prepayment amounts, through their app. So if somebody wants to prepay 1,000 rupees on his loan or 2,000 rupees on his loan, he's free to do so on the app. So that is a unique feature that we provide on the app, and that is another feature that attracts customers. So it keeps them hooked on. So if they have an excess of 1,000, 2,000 rupees in a particular month, they can actually reduce the loan balance by that much. So it does a couple of things. One is it keeps them hooked on our app. It helps us to build retention because then if he's able to prepay his loan through our app, and on a regular basis, then such customers find no reason to balance transfer their loan. So these are all the reasons for us to kind of promote this, and this is a number that's the reason we are tracking this number.
Okay, interesting. Thank you so much. All the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Anand Bhavnani from White Oak Capital. Please go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity. Quick two questions. First is, in terms of our cost of fund, I see that marginal cost of borrowing is 7.6, whereas average was 7.2. So, should we take it that cost of fund is now going to rise, and that the spread that we have seen 5.5 will from quarters going forward?
So I'll explain. So the 7.2% blended is because we have a high share of NHB. Now the NHB borrowing is a cyclical function, so essentially quarter 3 and quarter 4. So given that our marginal rate now is around 7.6%, once the NHB loans come for FY22, we will again see some relaxation there. So overall, we should be able to stay in this range, provided the interest rate environment stays here. Apart from the interest rate environment, this range of 7.2 to 7.4 is maintainable for at least 1 or 2 quarters.
Okay. NHB, do we have any sense of what would be the approximate quantity?
We couldn't follow your question.
Sorry to interrupt, sir. Your voice is breaking, sir.
Apologies. Do we have any sense of the approximate funding that we might get from NHB in due course?
No, it will depend on the specific scheme. So it's a bit premature to have a guess on that number.
Sure. And in terms of securitization, given that there is anemic loan growth in the banking system as a whole, are you seeing better terms this year versus, let's say, a year ago?
Yeah. So because we are in the affordable home segment, which is a PSL loan, so we've always enjoyed very good rates, and we continue to do so. We have seen slightly increased demand and more options, but pricing is already at MCLR. So that's where we are.
Okay. And lastly, in terms of the asset quality, it has turned out very, very good for us. And do you see any particular worries that might lead to any deterioration except for wave 3? Are you confident of maintaining this asset quality going forward from here on?
Yeah, in our case, frankly, wave 2 was milder than wave 1. It was also shorter. And in most of the markets where we are present, the economy has recovered quite sharply, and people. If you see our investor presentation, the first couple of pages, you can see actually that the employment rate or the unemployment rate is even lower than pre-COVID levels in some of our markets. So all of this has contributed to a very sharp recovery in collections for us. So at the moment we are feeling fairly positive. We are not seeing any reason to be worried about it.
Thank you. I'll come back in the queue.
Thank you. Participants, to ask a question, you may press star and 1 now. The next question is from the line of Nidhesh Jain from Investec. Please go ahead.
Thanks for the opportunity. Firstly, how do you see the OPEX to AUM ratio trending over next few years? It has been quite volatile in last 5-6 quarters, and probably because of COVID. On a steady state basis over next 2 to 3 years, how should we think about OPEX to AUM ratio?
So we have planned for a gradual. We have planned.
This is the conference operator. There is a disturbance coming from your line. Request you to mute your line while the management answers your question.
So we have planned for a gradual decrease in OPEX to AUM, and this will come from basically 2 areas. One is just scaling up and better utilization of our branches, so the operating leverage that is sitting there. Plus, we are taking a lot of initiatives to convert processes into digital processes and automate various processes, etc. So some of those gains will come from the efficiency gains. So our aim is to get to a 2.5 to 3% over a 2 to 3 year period. And so, like I said, the sharp decline that you're seeing in the last quarter is also slightly contributed because of some lull created by the COVID wave too.
So OPEX to AUM should be around 2.5% over the next 3 years. That is
right.
Secondly, what we have seen that some of the affordable housing finance companies are selling a lot of insurance products, and they earn a significant amount of fee income. In some cases, fee income is almost 1%, 1.5% of the disbursement amount that they earn just on the insurance product. But what I see in your P&L that there is no significant fee income that we are earning. So how do we think about that strategy?
So we sell only one insurance product, which is the credit life cover, and that is basically to protect our customers from in case of an event, and that product income attached to it. And what we basically earn on that product is basically the insurance premium that we finance. So whatever is the interest earning on that portion, that is what we earn on it.
But why are we not getting any commission on that? I think other companies get a decent amount of commission.
No, on the credit life product, IRDA does not allow commission.
Okay. Sure. And lastly, on the asset quality, as you mentioned that next every quarter we should expect 30 basis point reduction in GNPA. What should be the credit cost that we should factor in for the full year?
So the pre-COVID level credit cost has been in the region of 40 basis points. This year likely to be slightly higher because the COVID impact is still not fully played out. So we anticipate somewhere between 60 to 80 basis points in that range for this year, and then from next year it should normalize.
Sure. Thank you much. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Chintan Shah from ICICI Securities. Please go ahead.
Hello. Sir, thank you for the opportunity. So, sir, one thing on the restructuring part. If you can just give some flavor on the nature of the restructuring. Means, would the accounts have been restructured as in it would be a tenure extension or EMI change, or what would be the nature of that? And secondly, any sectoral flavor, or would it be from home loans or LAP or anything on that?
Yeah, see, 90% plus of our book is home loans itself. So a majority of the restructuring is also, the restructuring also is in similar ratio, kind of 90-10 or 85-15 skewed between housing finance and LAP. And the way we have given the restructuring is, it's pretty uniform across all the customers. Whatever was the number of installments that they had pending, we have basically given them a moratorium for that, and we have extended their tenure to accommodate the moratorium. So if somebody had 4 installments pending, we have added that as to their principal, and we have extended the tenure to pay that back.
Okay. And so, sir, the interest component for that 6 months, for example, if the restructuring is for 6 months, so interest also would be charged on that 6 months, right?
That's right. So interest will be charged. So that is the portion that we have added to the principal to extend the loan.
Okay. And sir, one thing on the liquidity part, so we are currently having a liquidity of means around 1,500 crores. So would we be maintaining this much liquidity, or would that liquidity buffer go down with as the COVID pandemic goes away? Yeah.
If you put the liquidity, around 1,000 crores is on the balance sheet and 480 crores is undrawn line. So over the next 2 to 3 quarters, we will want to bring it down to somewhere around 500 crores as the first target.
Okay. And so how much will that impact on our margins? Any rough estimate?
Almost 25 basis points in that range.
Okay, got it. And yeah, one last thing on this digital branch sourcing. So I suppose for the digital branches, so how is the sourcing done for the digital branches? That was my question. Since we don't have any manpower employed at any of our physical offices, so is the sourcing also completely online via connectors, or what will be the sourcing mix? Any rough estimate on that?
Yeah, sourcing mix for digital branches is fairly similar to the other branches. So, the way we operate digital branches is basically these are outreach locations where our relationship managers visit from the nearest physical branch. The origination methods are similar to our normal branches. So there is digital sourcing, there's connectors, there is local marketing that we do, etc. As happens in the branches, the connectors basically feed in the lead on their app, and it comes to us. It basically comes to us digitally, and then a relationship manager takes on from that point, meets the customer, and takes it forward. So whatever be the channel, the relationship manager basically picks up the lead, and then he visits that market and meets the customer and takes the lead forward. The digital part actually plays out more from the post disbursal point. Prior to disbursal, there's an agreement that needs to be signed. So we have started the e-agreement process. So we will send a link to the customer. We counsel him from the nearest branch through a video channel, and the customer can then use his Aadhaar, Aadhaar number to sign the agreement. So that's the digital operation part. And post disbursal, the collection as well as the servicing is again digital. So we have the app. So customer, if he has any queries, he puts it on the app. And similarly, if he has any payment, if he wants to make a payment, he can make it through the app itself. So basically 70% of the engagement with the customer in these locations is digital. There is an initial 20-30% of engagement when the loan is being originated, and the relationship manager needs to meet the customer to educate them, etc.
Sure. Thank you, sir. And sir, one last thing on the restructuring part. So anything in pipeline, means what would be the pipeline for restructuring for the next quarter or so?
Looking at our collection numbers and looking at the bounce rates which are decreasing, collection momentum is very good. At the moment, we are of the mind that we don't want to do any further restructuring. However, we will look at what kind of requests we get from customers and then take a final call.
Oh, okay. This is very helpful. And so one last thing, just on the collection part. So what percentage of our collections would be in digital mode? Since if we look at the collection efficiencies, there has been hardly any blip in April and May despite the second wave. So just wanted to understand what percentage of collections will be in digital mode. And so any cash collections, or most of them would be in digital form?
So let me start from the bounce rate. So for example, if let's say July you're looking at our bounce rate was 16%, so which means 84% of the customers have anyway cleared the payment through the electronic debit. Right, so that's the electronic payment straight away. Out of the balance 16% who have bounced the payment, about 4%, 4 to 5% is in cash. The remaining 11% of the customers pay through some of the other electronic modes. So either they make an NEFT payment, or they pay through our own app, or they pay through the BBPS methodology. That is, through any of the payment gateways, Google Pay, etc. So all of this put together is about 10-11%, and about 4% is cash.
Okay, sir. Thank you. This is very helpful. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to remind participants that you may press star 1 to ask a question. The next question is from the line of Chandrasekhar Sridhar from Fidelity International. Please go ahead.
Hi. Sorry, just wanted to confirm again, what was the write-off number for the quarter? And I think you said it was some large related to some large accounts. So just some clarity on that, question one. The second was, you still carrying some levels, fairly reasonably high levels of liquidity on the balance sheet, and just your thoughts on how does it sort of run off, or you continue to keep this liquidity on the balance sheet? And just the third is, where are we just in the whole process of getting to about 180 odd crores of monthly disbursements? In the last quarter, it got close to about 150 odd crores. I'm trying to understand, are we on track to get to 180 crores sort of for the remainder of the year?
Sure, Chandra. I'll take the first two. So on the write-off, Chandra, we have the write-off impact on the P&L is around 3 crores. The total value of the loan which is written up is around 12 crores. So essentially, we were already carrying a 9 crore provision against the same. So that I think addresses the first one. On the liquidity,
so it's not. I think he asked whether it is any large account. So it is not any large account. It is basically retail accounts only. But Chandra, if you remember, we were carrying some of these assets in Alwar and places like that, which were very sticky, where we could not dispose of, and we don't see a recovery in the medium term. So the board felt that ideally we should be writing it off because recovery is not anticipated in the medium term. So that is the part that has been written off.
Understood.
Right. So the second question on your liquidity and the fact that we're carrying close to 1,000 crores. So yes, it will have to come off the balance sheet, so in a slightly gradual manner. So in about 2 quarters, we are targeting to close to around 500 crores, 2 to 3 quarters. So that's our first goal, and then we move from there. On the question on disbursement of 1,800 crore, I'll hand over to Manoj.
Yeah. So, Chandra, the disbursement momentum has come back quite sharply, and so this quarter we should be able to get to at least the previous quarter levels or more actually. So that's where we are. So I mean, to your question of whether we'll be able to get to that, I think you're saying 180 crores average, so which is about 2,000 crores for the year. We are fairly confident of reaching those numbers.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Dhruvish from Mirabilis Investments. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for the opportunity. So I have 3 questions. First is on the expansion strategy. So around 68% of our loan book comes from Gujarat, Maharashtra, and Tamil Nadu. So do we plan to penetrate deeper in these 3 states, or we look forward to enter other states as well?
Yeah. So go ahead. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So that is the first question. Yeah.
Okay. So distribution, we are trying to focus on states which are more urbanized and which are larger contributors to the country's GDP, because we are seeing a strong correlation between that and the demand for affordable housing. So you can see that we are fairly strong in Gujarat and to some extent in Maharashtra. We started our expansion in South about 2 years ago, and South has also now started contributing about 30% of our business. So our expansion is focused on 6 states: Gujarat, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Andhra, Telangana, and Tamil Nadu. So these 6 states form the core of our expansion strategy. And in states like Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, and UP, it is more, you can say, opportunistic. So we are in specific pockets, of opportunity, and we are expanding there. Whereas in the other 6 states that I mentioned.
Hello, sir. Your voice is not audible. Hello. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay connected till I reconnect the management. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the management line reconnected to the call. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. So what I was saying was in other states like MP, Chhattisgarh, UP, Rajasthan, it's more opportunistic. So we will, prefer to focus on the larger markets and specific pockets in these states. Whereas the other 6 states that I mentioned, it is a more deeper, coverage strategy.
9 months, our number of branches have been stable at 72. So, do we have any target this year to expand the branches in terms of absolute numbers?
So, see, we have already started operations in about 33 states which deserve to have branches. In the normal course, we would have probably put up some of those branches in the last quarter. But because of the COVID wave, we refrained from doing that. But you will start seeing those branches now coming up in the next 2 quarters.
Okay. And any plans to penetrate in the east since we are not present there? So.
No, we are just going by market size. So if you see the eastern part of the country, it's not a large contributor to the overall housing finance business, which is why we are for the moment we are not focusing on it.
Okay. And my second question is with respect to the overcapitalized balance sheet. So we have like a CRAR of 55%, which is intact since last 2 years, and because of that, our ROE is stagnant at 10%. So do we have a ballpark number in terms of capital adequacy by the end of year?
Capital adequacy, maintaining a high capital adequacy is important. And it is seen as a strong point by rating agencies, lenders, etc. So I think that's the number that we want to keep it high. But at the same time, we are carrying a lot of cash on the balance sheet, which is something that we want to deploy. We have a strategy to slowly start unwinding that over the next 2-3 quarters. So you will see that happening, and there will be a gradual reduction in CRAR as a result of that as well.
Ballpark number we have in mind to bring down the CRAR by the year end?
We don't have a ballpark number for the CRAR, but liquidity is something, as Nutan mentioned, we want to bring it down to about 3 months liquidity, to 8 months of liquidity.
I wanted to know your SMA as a percentage of AUM for Q1. SMA 2.
Yeah, so SMA 2 is basically the stage 2 part, which is 3 point. So the total increase 5.8, out of which the SMA is 3.8%.
What was it in the last quarter?
Last quarter was 2.3%.
2.8.
2.3. 2.3 has gone up to 3. Yeah.
Okay, and pre-COVID, if you recall?
Pre-COVID, it was about 1% or so.
Okay. And just last question on the KRAs of the RM. So since the RM is involved in the collection also, so from what I understand is before COVID, more weightage was given to the sourcing over collection, and after the COVID and particularly after the second wave, we increased the KRA weightage. We increased the collection KRA weightage of the RM. So how do we plan to do that going ahead?
No, but we always had a 50% weightage for sales and collections for the RMs. So pre-COVID also the weightage used to be 50-50. Unless it is a market which is a new market and where there is no collection account at all. In which case we used to have higher weightage for sales, etc. Otherwise, it's always been 50-50. It was only during, I think, first quarter of last year when we had a very little disbursals and practically, you can say, crisis situation. That was only a quarter where we actually increased their weightage for collection. has always been at 50-50 levels.
Got it. Thanks. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Anand Bhavnani from White Oak Capital. Please go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity again. Sir, what percentage of our book would now be fixed rate loans?
Yeah, we as a process, we don't do any fixed rate loans. It is just that there are certain schemes of NHB where we have to actually offer a fixed rate loan to the customer, and it is back to back fixed. In the sense, the NHB portion, NHB lending to us is also fixed for those loans. So that is the only part that is fixed rate, and that is probably around 10-15% of our book, something like that. 500 crores. 500 crores is in that category. So in a real sense, it is not fixed in that sense, but because it's back to back fixed.
Got it. And of our disbursal of 3046 million in Q1, what would be the number of files underlying this disbursal or number of customers?
It will be about 3,000 to 4,000 accounts.
Sir, I was looking for exact number because from our ticket size, I had a sense it will be around 3,000 to 4,000. And so maybe I'll connect offline with Manish and maybe I'll take it offline from Manish.
I'll tell you the reason. See, because these are tranche disbursals, right? So the 305 crores is across multiple accounts which come up for multiple disbursals. So you can't really, tag it one to one, which is why I said give you an approximate number. Because the disbursal happens over a period of 6 to 7 tranches for every loan. So the 305 crores that was disbursed is not against, it's not against those specific 3,000 loans.
Okay, so there might be some completion linked construction plans or something, and so there will be drawdown of.
So every loan gets, so for example, a loan will come up for disbursal, then again after 1 or 2 months, the balance disbursal will take place. So the 305 crores will constitute multiple such loans.
Okay, so of this 305 crore of disbursal, then what is the fresh disbursal, as in not to a customer who is already part of them, but more so a new origination, a new file altogether?
Yeah, I think you are talking about fresh originations in the last quarter.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that is about 4,350 crores. Yeah, 350 crores. That is 350 crores.
Okay, got it.
350 crores, talking about 3,000 cases.
Got it. Yeah. So that's what I was actually looking for. 3,000 cases, 350. So, and sir, what percentage of the disbursement that we did, 3046 million, would be any top-ups to existing customers?
Total top-ups in the last quarter was 5 crores.
Okay, 50 million. Okay, got it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We would like to remind participants that you may press star 1 to ask a question. As there are no further questions, I would now like to hand the conference over to Mr. Manoj Viswanathan for closing comments.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us on the call. I hope we have been able to answer all your queries. In case you require any further details, you may get in contact with Manish Kayal, who heads the investor relations function for us, or you can get in touch with Orient Capital, our external investor relations advisor. Thank you so much.
Thank you. On behalf of Home First Finance, that concludes this conference. Thank you for joining us, and you may now disconnect your lines.